You're listening to Trek FM.
Want to join in the conversation and share your thoughts on this episode? Join the Babel Conference, our listeners' discussion group on Facebook. Just type BABEL into the Facebook search field, and we'll look forward to seeing you there.
This is Steve Sansweet of Rancho Obi-Wan, and you're listening to the 602 Club.
Hello and welcome to Trek FM's local watering hole, coming at you live from the United States of Zombieland, and it's time to nut up or shut up. And of course, with me, as she is every week, unzombified, Christy Morris,
aka Tallahassee.
Well, I was just thinking, like, you would be your name would be Atlanta.
Right.
Probably, right? And mine would be Vancouver. And everybody would be like, that Vancouver? No, not that Vancouver, the other one. So, yeah.
It'd get confusing.
Exactly. No, every time I say I live in Vancouver, people think it's Vancouver, BC. So, it's not. It's not. There's another Vancouver, and it's in Washington State. So, anyway, excited to be here as we start off on a little duology. We're going to talk about some Zombieland, and then next week we'll be back for a double tap because, well, that's rule number 2. So, before we get into that and talking about the movie, don't forget you can find us wherever your podcasts, on Apple Podcasts, everywhere else you can find podcasts. Pretty much we're there. You can even find us on Spotify. So, hit us up, though, with a star rating review wherever you are, and especially if you're on Apple Podcasts. Honestly, I'd say it's been a long time since somebody's given us a review over on Apple Podcasts, so we'd really appreciate it. And we always share those reviews out on the show. You can find us on Twitter at TrekFM or on Facebook at facebook.com/TrekFM, so please like us there, follow us there. That way you can converse with Christy and I on the different subjects that come up on the 602 Club, hashtag 602 Club. We've got the listeners-only discussion group. That's on Facebook, too. And to get there, type Babel into the search field because it's called the Babel Conference. And if you're on our website at trek.fm, any of the show pages that you look up, they'll have a button there that says discussion, and that can let you in as well. And last but not least, please, if you would like to send us an email, go to trek.fm/contact. Choose a show. Choose the 602 Club, and then Christy and I can talk to you that way. And we want to say a quick thank you to all of our associate producers. Honestly, we have so many podcasts coming to you from the Trek FM network. There's absolutely no way we can do this alone. So we have some great associate producers here through Patreon. Ken Tripp, Davis Grayson, Wyatt Millett, and Daniel Noah. They've been supporting the show for a long time. We really appreciate that. And part of that is because every single month, they support the network to make sure that this show, as well as every other show on the network, keeps coming to you. So you can do that too at patreon.com/TrekFM. You can become a part of our team. We've got some great contribution levels that have some even extra perks. But honestly, in the end, every little bit helps. And if everybody who listened to Trek FM just gave us $1 a month, it would be huge. So please go over to patreon.com/TrekFM and support us so we can keep doing this as long as possible. So, Christy, this was not on the outline, but I thought I'd ask you this before we even get started. Like, where do you land when it comes to zombie movies? So, like, are they a thing that you really like in general, or has it not generally been your thing? I'm just kind of wondering where you land on this really important topic. Almost as important as, do you like pineapple on pizza?
Well, I'm going to shock the world, or maybe not, and say zombies are actually my least favorite monster, particularly in movies like this when I feel like they're done really well, really realistic looking. It's sometimes hard for me to watch. But I think that the comedy through this movie and like Shaun of the Dead helped me get through it better. But like, that's why I don't watch Walking Dead, for example. It was too gross. I tried episode 1 and there was half of a woman crawling on the ground without her other half. And I was like, nope.
Yeah. You know, it's funny because I didn't know where you landed because we had never talked about it before, but I'm kind of right there with you. I don't really like horror movies in the first place. I don't like lots of gore. That's not my thing. And so I generally try to stay away from movies of the gore variety. And a lot of times, zombie movies tend to be very, very gory. And so I, like you, The Walking Dead, I have no desire to watch that show. I've heard it's good, but okay, that's great, but it's just not my thing. Mm-hmm. And, it was interesting because this is what I think is fascinating to me, a different type of zombie movie. You mentioned Shaun of the Dead came around, right? And kind of created something different in the genre where they added comedy to the zombies. And I loved Shaun of the Dead, and so when I saw this coming out, this is something where I immediately kind of like, oh, I'll bet I'll like that too. And I don't know what it is. Like, what do you think it is about adding comedy to zombies that makes it palatable?
I guess because it's that sort of making you more at ease with it seeming like it's not real. I think with having realistic looking zombies can really freak out, especially those of us that like subconsciously are afraid of them. But then having that extra comedy element makes you realize, okay, it actually isn't real. Everything's fine. We're all laughing here.
I think that's a good way to put it. Because I was trying to think of, what is it that differentiates this between, say, like The Walking Dead for me, which, is obviously a drama. It's all about the people drama. The zombies actually, I've heard, tend to be kind of just ancillary in a sense to what's happening with these people, right, the characters that you're following. And yeah, I think there is something that the comedy does where it lowers the intensity level. Like, there's something obviously funny about somebody being able to smack somebody upside the head with a baseball bat and it be a zombie and it not really matter. Like you don't feel anything for that happening, other than like, oh, that's funny. So, the piano dropping on somebody's head, to kill a zombie is hysterical, right. So yeah, I think there's something about the way that the comedy changes the perception of the zombies themselves and even the gore of it to where I don't know, it's that weird metaphysical realm between comedy and horror. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if it's even necessarily, if there is a way to describe it in words, exactly what it is that makes it work. But, I'd say this definitely is, Shaun of the Dead, and this, there's just something about it. They found a niche, and it's funny. Mm-hmm.
Well, and it's like another similar movie, Tucker and Dale versus Evil. Michael, my husband, got me to watch that, and it's the similar kind of thing where it's I guess I would describe them as a horror comedy, is the best way I could put it. But I was thinking also, it's not only the tone, but also how they dehumanize the zombies in these movies. Yeah. Whereas like in Walking Dead, I vividly remember somebody's wife had become a zombie and he was having to face her every night trying to come home and decide whether or not to put her out of her misery. And it's like, that's a really somber thing to deal with. Whereas this is like, oh, no, they're just a bunch of sick people. We don't know them. They're different now. There's no saving them. It completely dehumanizes them. And so it's like you don't really care whether or not they get knocked upside the head.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. In fact, the comedy helps with that, I think, which is funny that would happen. And so, yeah, I think that's a really good point, actually. So, And the other thing I was thinking when I was watching this, one of the most interesting things is that this movie has a very similar storyline to Vacation, National Lampoon's Vacation,
which I've actually never seen. Don't kill me.
No, it's fine. That movie is all about them going to Wally World and all of the shenanigans that happen on the way to getting to Wally World. Okay. And so, this whole movie about them going to Pacific Funland, going cross-country for that is kind of similar in many ways. And there's all of these different little side stories that happen on the way there, which I just thought that was kind of funny, to basically take, very classic comedy movie and basically add zombies, vacations with zombies.
That's interesting that, maybe even that's where they were inspired was, hey, let's just throw that in.
Yeah, I definitely think that's the case. One of the things, too, that makes, I think, the comedy work here is that, they do this whole thing with these rules.
Yes.
Which I think is probably one of the most successful parts of this movie, is the fact that they added these rules because it also seemed to take the idea of like the worst case scenario type books, and mesh that together with, a zombie movie and possibly even like video gaming. And you put all that together and it felt like it just really works.
Yeah, and I think, too, having that visual cue reminding you in text on the screen of the rules when the situation arises is better than just the audio confirming it again, because it just kind of further cements the joke. Like he said, don't forget, always check the bathrooms, or like always check the back seat, or rule number 2, the double tap. I love that they put them in the way that they did, not just that they had them at all. But I think it adds this whole nother element to the movie that makes the comedy even better.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think, by creating the characters that they do, obviously, you've got Columbus and Tallahassee as our 2 main characters for a while there. Like having that, the one who just lives life just completely with no rules, he's kind of like Outback Steakhouse, no rules, just right.
Yeah.
And then the other one is neurotic and full of rules, and I think that really helps kind of create that almost like buddy cop feeling to the movie. And yeah, I think the thing about the rules with them popping up on screen, they do it with such comedic timing. Like, that's the thing that I think is really smart. It's like, it's not just the comedic timing between the actors, but they have, a real comedic timing as to when to add the rule to really accentuate that joke, which is, that takes work. And so I think that's one of the things that really makes this work.
Yeah, it seems like every time it applies, for example, it's right during the initial jump scare, I guess I would call it.
Yeah. I thought it was really interesting too, because I was looking this up, and they went, they did a bunch of videos promoting the movie with Woody Harrelson and Jesse Eisenberg, where they expanded on the list that got presented in the film. And like, there's a bunch of other ones. Like, I would have loved to know, and I need to try and see if I can find these, but like, number 15 is bowling ball, which I'm like,
right. No explanation.
Mean? Yeah.
There's actually 49 rules.
Yeah, it's great. Number 21, avoid strip clubs. Like, what in the world? I mean, I don't know what that means.
No, Ziploc bag caught my eye. Number 19.
That's funny. That's really funny. I wonder if that has to do with like a smell thing. Like, if you have snacks, put them in a Ziploc bag so the zombies can't smell them or something. I don't know.
Maybe.
Yeah. But yeah, all in all, I think that one, it's something that they do that helps lighten the mood, because, thinking about just the zombies themselves in the movie, like the zombies here, like you mentioned, they look good. Like, they look, and it's disgustingly gross. And so the zombies themselves here in this movie, like if they didn't have the comedy, they've really created zombies in this film that, like, yeah, it kind of would terrify your dreams.
Yeah, like, you don't want to mess with that. You don't want to get anywhere near it. It's sort of like me with cockroaches. I want to kill it from as far away as humanly possible so I don't have to touch it. Yeah, that's how I felt about the zombies in this movie. I think that especially giving them that realistic look makes them more scary for sure, even though there's the comedy in the movie. I like that it was actually different than, like, I feel like zombies I've seen before were kind of more dried up, I guess is the term I would use. Like, they didn't have this, like, blood pouring out of their mouth constantly, or sometimes it even looks like vomit. I mean, I don't know what's going on inside a dead body, but it seemed pretty gross.
Yeah, I just don't like brains that much. So, it is, it is interesting too, because like you said, there's a look and a feel to these zombies that I found ridiculously creepy. But also it's graphic. Like, again, if there's no humor to this movie, like some of the scenes, if they had gone a different direction, would have been super scary. Like
when they're driving down the road, just Tallahassee and Columbus, and they see the woman eating the guy.
Yes.
That would be really horribly disturbing in a more somber tone movie.
Yes, absolutely. And even any time that they're fighting the zombies too, again, if you're taking out the comedy element and adding in the horror element, which is all about, like the music and like the tone and the seriousness of the actors. But since none of them are taking this seriously, it's amazing just how much that changes our thought process around the zombies themselves. But I have to give them credit, because this isn't a big budget movie, but they really did a great job with the makeup work and effects work for the zombies to make them feel and look just uber creepy.
Absolutely. And I think that it just also helps with further cementing why they're going through all of the stuff that they're going through. I think the creepiest part of the entire movie is when, toward the end, the girls are trapped on the ride and all of the zombies are trying to crawl up it and get them. That's when it's supposed to feel more serious, and then it especially does because of the way that they made them look. And I meant to say, they're really fast for zombies.
Yeah, it did. I don't know if you've ever seen World War Z with...
No.
Okay. So the zombies there are super fast too. Even faster than this. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Like, these aren't your like lumbering zombies moving at a very leisurely pace, for their zombie mosey, their zombie constitutional.
No, they will fight you.
Yeah. So no, I actually agree. And I do think that that's one of the things that they do well with the zombies here, is that, they, with all of the humor, there is a sense of danger for the characters.
Right.
Like, I think that that's one of the things that the movie does well, is like when you put the girls up there and they're out of ammunition and there doesn't seem to be any answers left, like, they could be gone at any moment then. And the guys are going to come, but it still puts them in danger because of what we've seen these zombies are capable of doing. Mm-hmm. So they balance, I think, that out really well, which is, it's just a good balancing act for the film.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that too, it really helped having, as we were talking about with some other movies, having a small cast, because I think if you had too many people to follow, that it doesn't make it feel as much like a post-apocalyptic kind of film. And I think it was meant, just like the Cloverfield movies, to be more of like a character study kind of movie.
Yeah. No, I think you're absolutely right. Perfect time to be able to talk about the cast. And I can't imagine better casting than Jesse Eisenberg as, the reclusive, shut-in, classic millennial. He's obsessed with his video games. He's like the uber geek.
Full of phobias.
Can't talk to a girl, it's riddled with the cliches, but he's so good at that type of role, and like, he just sells it. But he also, there is something about him that I think he's able to do, and he did this in The Social Network too. It's like, he can take that kind of character and he makes you kind of be able to feel a little bit sorry for him, and like he doesn't alienate you by playing that character, which I think is impressive. I mean, that's exactly what you need in this role. You need him to be able to do both.
Yeah, I'm glad that you said that, because that's something that I've thought since I saw him in The Social Network and then later learned he was going to play Lex Luthor. He just really has that capability of, in particular, playing the nerd kind of character, but also making it feel relatable to everyone.
Yes.
Like, we've all got fears, and maybe we all sometimes have moments when we've gotten into our own little bubble and pushed people away. And then now he's realizing in Zombieland that he pushed people away and pushed them away until he had nobody left.
Mm.
And then literally the world kind of ended, and then he did have no one left.
I mean, yeah. I mean, there's nothing worse than your hot neighbor coming over for the first time only to have her, turn into a zombie on you.
Right.
So before you even get to first base, I mean, gosh. I think you're absolutely right. There's something about him, and, I've liked him pretty much any role I've seen him in. I thought he was actually a great, Lex Luthor. I really enjoyed him in that role. Again, it's partially because he can do, like, creepy and like seem super smart, but at the same time, there's something about him like it's The Social Network too, where it's like there's some sort of sympathy that you find for the character, and so here, he's much more comedic in the role, but I still think he finds a way to kind of make you feel for this character, like you said, whose journey is one from like having shut everybody out of his life when the world is good, quote unquote, and once the world has turned into Zombieland, having to find a way to connect with people because there's nothing else left, and there's no room for survival without other people in the end, really. So it's interesting to watch him go from somebody who is dedicated to being a loner to being somebody who's dedicated to being part of this weird family.
Yeah. I love too when he actually says, I realized once there were no more people that I kind of missed people. But yeah, I mean, it's something about humanity in general is just that we crave companionship, whether that be, friendship or romantic or whatever. People don't like to spend all of their time alone without speaking or interacting with another human being. And so he's finally realizing that we do need each other. And like you were saying, just pure numbers of trying to protect yourself against zombies or the end of the world, it's really difficult to do alone. So I love that they explore that kind of back and forth of he was alone before, but now he's really alone now. Mm-hmm. And then by contrast with Tallahassee, that we see that he, we thought had a dog before, and we don't really get a lot of a backstory for him, and then find out later that it wasn't a dog, that he lost his son.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's a better actor to do this type of role, because Woody Harrelson is so good at being the free-spirited, doesn't give a flying frack about anything kind of person. And yet, yes, I mean, the moment where he breaks down and you realize that, like you said, that you're talking about a son, not a dog, and then he shares the pictures with all of them. It is a really moving moment, and you see that there's more to these people. And I think that's one of the things that the movie does very well, especially through a character like him, where it's like you need there needed to be more than just comedy. And they found, I thought, the right ways to tell a slightly more poignant story with these characters and just the movie in general. And they couch it all in a really funny and fun and vibrant way. But, there's some gems of really good thematic material that come through a character that you don't expect that to come through,
Yeah.
So I think that's great.
And also in doing that, showing that maybe sometimes we laugh because it helps us cope with all of the bad stuff. So maybe the reason that Tallahassee's gotten to this point where he just does not care about how he treats zombies and actually probably enjoys the way he treats zombies is because he has some serious trauma in his past. And so he's like, you know what? Enjoy the little things. Find something that you still like about what's going on, because otherwise, why is life worth it?
I mean, in a lot of ways, it seems like anger management,
Right.
Him taking out all of his anger and frustration on zombies or, a random car, it all stems from this fact that he is a man who is actually deeply wounded.
Mm-hmm.
And he's deeply hurt. And I think it's interesting, again, kind of watching the movie kind of deal with those kind of things in this, very funny context, but that that there's still more to these characters than just funny one-liners the whole time, which, again, I think makes for a more enjoyable experience, and it makes a more rewarding experience even just where watching the movie, because it's not just about the laughs. You begin to kind of have a feeling for these characters. You can empathize with them, and, there are some nice little nuggets of thematic material throughout the whole thing, which is great. I don't know what we can say about Emma Stone, but she's good in everything that she's in. And
Amen.
She's so perfect here to play that kind of smart-assy, stuck-up, she does that really well. I mean, she's kind of playing a similar character to what she does in Easy A here.
Yeah.
But she's so good at it, and then the moments where they have a real emotional connection, between her and Columbus, and, her and her sister, and this whole idea of her trying to give her sister some semblance of normalcy in a world that's gone absolutely crazy there's you don't expect that, but she pulls it off perfectly. All of these actors are able to do that. I think they can flip, between being really funny and sarcastic to being somebody who's having a real moment. And that's really important.
Yeah, I wonder if, and maybe I'll go back and check and let you guys know in the Babel conference, but I wonder if the reason that these people in particular were cast was that they went and looked at who are really good dramatic actors that can play multiple kinds of roles and give them all the weight that they need, so they can be funny when they need to be funny, and then they can be dramatic when they need to be dramatic. Because I think that all four of these people are known for that. Because, Jesse Eisenberg, aside from being incredibly hot, is really good at those things. Woody Harrelson as well. We've seen him in, stuff like After the Sunset, and then, which was a comedy with him and Salma Hayek and Pierce Brosnan. And then we see him in something like this, where it is a comedy, but there's that real moment, like we said, of him losing his son that makes it into more of a serious tone. And then, of course, Abigail Breslin, who's Little Rock from Little Miss Sunshine. I think that she's really good at playing those kinds of roles as well. So I think that maybe that's why they were all cast for this movie in particular.
Yeah, no, I agree. I was just thinking of how, Abigail Breslin, everybody knew her from Little Miss Sunshine, and that was really her coming out party to the world and film in that way. And then to do something like this, where it's Little Miss Sunshine has its comedy moments, but this is comedy straight up. And then, I know I've heard a lot of people say that actually comedy's harder than drama. So the fact that they can do both back and forth, I think here is really good. And yeah, I really enjoyed her as in the film. I think she immediately kind of brings gravitas. She has a slightly smaller role than everybody else in the movie, but You know, when Jesse Eisenberg is like, you haven't seen Ghostbusters? You don't know who Bill Murray is? You know, and they sit down and they're watching that together. That's just a really fun, like this kind of like brother-sister thing. Like, what? Mm-hmm. So, yeah, she's really, again, she's just like the other three in the sense that she's great and she completes the ensemble here really well. And I think you're absolutely right in pointing out this movie doesn't have a lot of characters in it, and that's really important because it helps them tell the story they need to tell for every single one of them without ever feeling like you didn't get enough.
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe they could have given a little bit more of where Wichita and Little Rock came from as far as their parents or why they started becoming con artists or something. But I think in general, you get the gist of that. Somehow, some way they ended up having to do that and then became really good at it. Like, I love the whole engagement ring bit at the gas station.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
And then now, you know, it's like the main joke of the movie is that the two of them keep duping Columbus and Tallahassee. And even at the end, he's going, again? Like, they keep falling for the same thing. I love that.
Yeah, no, it's really good. So what I thought was most interesting is, you know, we get Bill Murray in the movie for about maybe 5 minutes, which is really funny, but that he wasn't their original choice. Like, they really wanted Patrick Swayze. And at that point, he was battling cancer and was unable to do it. But they also considered, like, Sylvester Stallone, you know, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, Matthew McConaughey, Jean-Claude Van Damme, Joe Pesci, Mark Hamill, Kevin Bacon, and Dustin Hoffman. Like, do any of those feel like ones that would have been like as you know, impactful as Bill Murray?
No, honestly, because I think Bill Murray is so great at doing even better than all of them do the back and forth of humor and serious. And it shows for sure in the scene where he's like, oh yeah, we're going to go mess with Columbus. And he runs in there like he's a zombie. And I immediately said out loud, he's going to shoot him. And sure enough, Columbus shoots him and actually kills Bill Murray in the movie. And it's like, oh, you saw it coming, but you were hoping it wasn't going to happen. But it's like it snaps you out of humor and now to, oh, he actually killed him. And then now you're kind of sad.
Yeah, it is. I think it's one of the big shockers of the movie that they would just kill Bill Murray like that.
Yeah.
But, you know, when you think about it, like, it makes complete sense. You live in a world where you don't question killing a zombie.
Right. So why would you come in, try to scare somebody dressed as a zombie and think they're not going to kill you?
I have no idea.
Yeah, I don't know.
And
like
especially,
you said, though,
I mean, come on. Columbus is, he's way too wound tight for that kind of joke.
Oh, yeah, he's not taking any chances.
No.
But I don't think it would have worked with any of the other actors as well as it works with Bill Murray. Like, Kevin Bacon?
Yeah. The only one that I feel like could possibly work would be somebody like Sylvester Stallone or maybe Mark Hamill. But I don't know if, like, at that point, Mark Hamill was, like, enough in the cultural zeitgeist at that point to truly, you know, because The Force Awakens hasn't come out again and people just,
right.
Like, you know, there's something about Bill Murray, you know, he's done lots of things, and at that point he had done things like Lost in Translation and all that kind of stuff, so he'd found a whole new audience that knew who he was, and so I think he really is kind of the perfect person to kind of do that with, and man, his house is awesome.
Oh yeah. The theater, I want that in my house.
Yeah.
But I think
pretty awesome.
I think though that it definitely was a good thing that they didn't go the Patrick Swayze route, even if he had been feeling well at that point. The fact that they were like, oh, we were thinking, you know, he could come in as a zombie, but he's like dancing like from Dirty Dancing, and I was going, oh no. Don't do that.
Yeah, I do. I think, it ended up working out the way it needed to. I also love that randomly Amber Heard is 406, the neighbor who becomes the zombie and tries to kill him. Like, that's funny.
Right? Because you're looking at her going, she looks familiar. Wait a minute. And then you realize who it is. But yeah, I mean, I think she's really great at playing that sort of stereotypical girl down the hall at your dorm kind of thing. And it's so funny that she really plays up her character's need to be comforted, and he's just eating it up.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean it's really great. So I just love the fact that this is a movie, like, they just get all these people to be in it. And it's like one of those movies where you kind of look back and like, how is everybody in that movie? And it's just it's one of those films that's also kind of turned into this cult classic, to where they were like, let's do another one. So I think that's really that's always the hallmark of a good movie like this. Like, you just don't expect, I don't necessarily think, for people to really respond to a movie called Zombieland, and you got all these people in it, and they turn it into something where everybody wants to, be a part of it, but two, it just becomes a hit. So I think, for me, I know that it is cheesy, but I do really love how this movie has this heart. And, we talked a lot about how it has this emotional depth with the characters, and part of that is, these people are forced to live together and become this family. And even more now, like, I loved them being, like, forced to drive in the car, and you see them, like, there's this whole montage of them having arguments throughout the whole day about different topics, because, like, they're forced to talk to each other because there's no cell phones distracting them. There could be music, right? You could have, like, an iPod or whatever, but other than that, iPods, by the way, are the things that you would have before phones, kids, that you would put music on because music didn't fit on your phone. So anyway, I just really appreciate this. This movie is really about family and the importance of, like, finding the time to connect together. And I've just, I was thinking about that, this idea, like, in this world of, like, constant distraction, these people find each other and they only have each other for entertainment, right? Like, and they have a lot of the classic entertainments that help people bond, like board games and music and a movie and having a drink together, like all the food, like looking for Twinkies, like all these things that bind people together. The common pursuit, the common journey, all of that I thought was really, really great. And it's just, it struck me as, like, this movie seems to be even more poignant in that theme now, in a world of complete distraction, than when this movie even came out, when it wasn't quite as bad just yet then.
Yeah, I think you've really hit on something with this, because I feel like now, thinking about that this whole movie is really centered around this part of it, and that the zombies are kind of more fluff that they have to deal with. But, like, the heart of it is about how we need each other. And I like, too, sort of that aspect, I guess I take as family is, not necessarily people that are related to you. It can be found family. Because, he's found out, Columbus basically found out that his parents are probably dead. And I guess he didn't have any siblings, so that was it for his biological family. And, then you get to go through this whole thing with him. You kind of feel bad for him because he had still never been in a relationship. And he's like, and she's the last person on Earth, probably. And he's like, I mean, I do think she's attractive, but what other options do I have? And then you just see, getting to know each of them and how they work with each other. I think it's really sweet seeing the kind of things you were mentioning about that, the way that they're bonding is not through technology. It's everything that forces people to have conversation and to look each other face to face. So I really like that. Like they're playing Monopoly in front of the fireplace. And I like that in a movie that is a horror comedy, you get a moment of romance that you're kind of shocked is in there. Wish Tallahassee got a little something more, but I guess sort of he gets a new child, I guess, with now sort of being like the father for Little Rock.
Yeah, I love at the beginning, we've got Columbus, who is the shut-in, whose only life is viewed through a computer screen, and it's all about this fake world, basically. And then he's forced into the real world, which is turned into an absolute nightmare. And that the only salvation comes through this group of people, right? And it comes through connection. Like the only way they're going to survive is to rely on each other. And the only way the human race would survive is for those that are not affected to rely on each other, right? So I think there's just a real beauty to being reminded that we are in a world where we need to stop being so focused on the things that drive us apart and drive wedges between us, and so stuck in our devices that we miss life,
Yeah.
And I don't remember where it comes from, but it's like, it's life, unless if you don't look up every once in a while, you're gonna miss it. And that's what happened almost to Columbus. Like, all of life almost passed him by, and he almost missed it because he was afraid of getting out there and doing something. And, like, you can't allow your fears and you can't allow your worries to keep you from experiencing what life has to offer. And, yeah, it is scary, and you're going to have to take risk, and things aren't going to work out. But it's much better to have lived than to, not lived and only have, an account on World of Warcraft to show for it.
Yeah. Well, and it's like when he brings up the rule, don't be a hero. And then later he says, you know what? Screw that. Be a hero. So he just decides to take the risk and try to save them, even though he might lose. And he decides to kiss Wichita, even though she might be like, ew, gross, why? I think that sums it up perfectly. It's about life is short, and that sometimes you have to take risks and put yourself out there, because otherwise, why are you here? Don't isolate yourself.
Yeah, that's 100% it. And I love, like, you were talking about the fact that, like, the changing of the rule to be a hero, because that is the transition from being somebody who's self-focused to being somebody who's other-focused. And life is so much more rewarding when we're not just focused solely on ourselves. Like that we are being self-sacrificial and loving and caring. And that's what we see all of these characters kind of finding their way back to, is a world where they come from, where everything made them self-focused, especially Zombieland. But they realize that it's the connection to each other that are going to make this worthwhile in the end. So I just love that. And I think, on top of that, there's that whole idea of, and of course it's very blatant, it's the little things, but it goes right along with this. And I think it's one of the best movie messages in the movie, because they kind of live in the zombie race, right? And we live in the rat race, and they're very similar. We lose sight of the little things in life. We miss it because of the busyness and the distractions, and that it is important to remember that it's usually those little things in life that make life worth living,
Yeah.
So I just appreciate that both of these themes really go together really well.
Yeah, I think that, maybe this is just us agreeing with each other over and over. I don't know. But it really does show you that, also in a world where you can feel like everything is so negative, that there's still something good left. And definitely, if you picture yourself in this kind of world where you feel like there's only a few people even left that aren't zombies, it could get really terribly depressing. And, I'm sure there were plenty of people there that felt like, why is it worth living anymore? So I like that they show that it's like there's always something worth it. If for Tallahassee that's Twinkies, then that's what it is. And I love how that even starts as a joke, and then it becomes like, you get it. I mean, if Twinkies or Oreos, let's go Oreos, are your favorite thing in the entire world, and that's like the one thing you think is still going to make your day, like, yeah, you would want a Twinkie everywhere you went.
Yeah, and I mean, like, taking those little joys in life, like, it's so easy for us to get focused on all the things that don't go right in life, that we do actually miss all the things that are going wrong, right in life, right? And a lot of times that comes from, like, us taking, we just take for granted the things that we have. Maybe you've got a great spouse or a great girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever. Maybe you've got a steady job. Maybe you've got a working car. Maybe you've got
great dog.
Food on the table, or a dog, or we just start to take things for granted because we get so used to them being there. And, that's something that, I've just been really thinking about lately in my own life. Like, it's so true. You don't really kind of realize what you have until things are gone. Or you're just like kind of slapped upside the head with like, oh, you still have, So I think that this movie just kind of helps us see that. And for them, they've had everything stripped away from them that they could possibly, desire, really. And so you begin to see any good, you do have to start with those little things, And so... And I think that's just a really key lesson in all of life, honestly. And so, yeah, both of those things are really cheesy and kind of cliche. But to me, I think having a movie like this, it's good. It's good to be reminded of good things. And they couch it in this goofy, horror, comedy-filled film. And yet... I like being able to watch a movie, and yeah, there were disgusting zombies, but by the end of this movie, I actually feel good about myself for having watched it, because it reminds me of the most important things in life, honestly.
Yeah. So you would say then that this is a wholesome family film?
No. This is an R-rated movie with lots of gross violence and tons of language. So no, this is not a family film, but it is one that an adult can watch and be actually, I think, strangely uplifted by.
Yes.
By the end of it, which that's really fun. That's really cool. Kind of reminds me of, movies like Superbad or 40-Year-Old Virgin, right? Or those type of films where it's like, it's got lots of crudity, right? But there is a message that underlies those movies that is really powerful, and that's really what the films are about. It's just kind of covered in a lot of
adult material.
Yeah, adult material, yeah. So, where do you fall with a rating then for Zombieland?
Let's see. Are we rating out of 5 or out of 10?
You can do what you want.
Okay. Well, for me, I think that it would naturally have a couple points taken off just because I am not into zombies, and these were particularly gross. But aside from that, I think really the only things I would change is maybe giving a little bit more info on the backstory of the characters. But I think as far as introducing how the world became this way, and giving you good emotional reasons to care about the characters, it's amazing. So for me, after all of it, I would probably give it an 8 out of 10 giant pairs of scissors.
I actually have the exact same rating. I'm right there with you. I think this is a really fun movie. This is a really enjoyable movie. It like we said, it's got more to it than just being funny or, a gross out horror movie. It has everything that you could kind of want, and it's kind of the perfect Halloweenish type movie too. Especially if you're not a big horror person, this is the perfect type of movie to watch. In the Halloween season. So as we're here in October, as we're recording, it's perfect. So yeah, 8 out of 10 for me as well. Right there with you. I think this is great stuff. And I'm really interested this week to see what your recommendations will be.
So my recommendation this week actually is a new show my husband and I started watching, and it's on Hulu. I don't know if you've heard of Blackish, but it is insanely funny. I actually found out about it first because I saw the cast on an episode of Family Feud recently.
Oh, nice.
Facing the cast from the Goldbergs. So that was pretty funny. But yeah, this show really talks about, what it must be like for people growing up in like Los Angeles, and then also trying to identify with not only that sort of class system of society, but also with how they feel they're supposed to act because we're a black family, like there's different things that are expected of us or whatever. And, it's funny just to see that they're trying to show you we all have the same fears, hopes, concerns, and, that everybody goes through this relationship with their parents of growing up, and it's a comedy above everything else. Like I think the one we were just watching was about a kid hiding in the department store clothing racks and then getting his first spanking at home. And I did that when I was a kid.
That's great. So my recommendation is I've just started the 5th book in the Expanse series, which is called Nemesis Games. The first book in the series is called Leviathan Wake. And it's a great series if you like sci-fi. It's one of the better sci-fi series I've ever read. It's also been turned into a show on Amazon, and the 4th season is coming out soon, I think even in November, if I remember correctly. Both are fantastic. The books and the show follow each other relatively closely. The books came first, but there are some differences. So it's not as though if you read the books, you're just going to feel like, oh, the show's not worth it. Like they do things differently enough so that you enjoy both. So I would highly recommend that series. If you're looking for a new series to read, it's fantastic. And if you're looking for a new series to watch, it's fantastic. So both are excellent choices. So yes, I'm recommending the Expanse series both ways. So, Christy, if people would like to, possibly catch up with you, see what's going on, because I know you've got other podcasts and stuff going on, where can people find you?
You can find me on Instagram and Twitter at Bespin Bell. And then, of course, on Facebook, I hang out in the Babel conference sometimes. I also am on a couple of different podcasts. I do a show once a month with some ladies on the Fantatrax network called Planet Leia, where once a month it's a group of 6 women from around the world talking about Star Wars. Then I also do a show with my friend Teresa Delgado called Sabers and Spells, where we talk about geeky stuff from Harry Potter, Star Wars, Stranger Things, and I think next we'll do more Umbrella Academy. So I hope you'll join us for that. And then last but not least, I do a 5-minute segment on the Star Wars Report once a month called Fashion in 5 about men's and women's Star Wars fashion.
And you can find me on Instagram, Letterboxd, Twitter, and Vero under the name MattRushing02. I am here on the network. I do another show. It's called The Orb. Chris Jones. When we get a chance, we record an episode about Star Trek Deep Space Nine. You can also find me over on the Nerd Party Network. I do 2 shows. One is called Owl Post. I do that with Drea Kaufman, and we are talking through one chapter of Harry Potter at a time. We are in the Half-Blood Prince, which it's really been fun as we're kind of getting down to the wire with the series, although We have about a year left with the podcast because of all of the chapters involved with those last 2 books. I do Aggressive Negotiations with John Mills. Every week we're talking about a new Star Wars topic. It's so much fun. And I mean, with the plethora of Star Wars content that we have coming out soon, like The Mandalorian, The Clone Wars coming back, The Rise of Skywalker, there's so much being added to Star Wars. So we enjoy talking about all of it. And then last but not least, you can find me doing Cinema Stories with my good friend Courtney. And that's where we talk about films through the lens of faith. But thank you so much for joining us.
And nut up or shut up, you hear?